Aloha. Today I wanted to do a follow-up video to the last video. I'm going to try to keep it short, but before I go into that, I wanted to share kind of like my process and just give an example or an idea of where I'm coming from when I make these videos. I'm going off of how this stuff comes naturally to me. I'm like not formulating these videos to do or say a particular thing. Whatever information comes naturally to me that I can add on from the previous videos, or that relates to something that like a current event, or relates to a bigger perspective that maybe I didn't see before, or maybe that I know some people might have questions about. That's how I make a video. And it even goes into adjusting to some of the comments. And I'll address some of the comments in this video because there were some serious comments that gave some really good examples of some of the problems that I see that aren't being acknowledged, but are actually being they're being covered up by either hopelessness, ignorance, apathy, or just a plain old just like not caring, just because the depths of the story are not really known, or looking the other way. Whatever it is, there's all kinds of defense mechanisms that have been generated in order to maintain a level of non-consciousness, to just say, well, what you're saying is divisive, or what you're saying is not taking into account this. Well, this is just one video. You haven't seen my other videos where I've actually addressed that. The design of this video is to share a particular focus, but all of these videos are one story. Every single video that I've done is pretty much like one chapter to an entire book of information that's just flowing naturally through whatever it is that I'm perceiving as my reality. So if you just take one chapter and you judge me, or you judge what I'm talking about from one chapter, you're actually missing the entire point of the work that I'm putting out here. It's like like sharing art. Like, this is what I'm doing is and I said that from the get-go, this is an art for me, in a sense that when a painter paints something, you're actually seeing a story or an image or a perspective of that painter, and you see it from your own eyes, and you'll never really see from the depths of that individual, because the translation there's something that gets lost in the translation. At the same time, there's something that gets found in the translation, and that's what I'm trying to do when I share these videos, trying to help people find something in the translation that doesn't even really a lot of the times get spoken about. That's why I have a lot of flack from a lot of people who watch these videos and say, well, you're racist, or you're divisive, or you're this, or you're that. And that's not really I'm not concerned with that, because that comes with the territory. If you're going to talk about stuff, that people are going to, tell you you're wrong. So I'm okay with that. But at the same time, these stories that come counter to whatever is being said also need to be addressed, and also need to be held accountable for what they are. This video that I'm getting ready to play right now, it has closed captions, so you can just read it. I'm not going to play the sound, so you can actually see what's really going on in reference to the design of the synthetic universe. The way the mindset, the conscious and the subconscious mindset of individuals and the collective as a whole today is an extension of the Columbian program. It's an extension of the colonial supremacy program, the conquering of the lands. This goes back to land and power. I will forever be speaking from that perspective as long as this system is still alive. This is about land and power. And now that the system has dominated the majority of the land, and the interaction with that land, with the fiat currency system, now the system needs to grow into the dominating of the entire consciousness of the human experience. So this is where transhumanism, the heliocentric model came in, the worshiping of technology, the telling you that since you evolved from a monkey to a caveman to what you are today, now your next evolutionary step is to merge humans with technology. This is all a very structured, a very formalized system that is designed to lock people down, not only on their body, not only on their mind, but in the soul, to lock down every single layer of who and what you are. And these so-called powers that be can only work in the realms where you remain ignorant of how deep this story goes. So if we can't even speak about, there's like, I'm going to share these comments that say people pretty much saying that racism doesn't exist. Racism isn't a thing anymore. And that's very dangerous. It's extremely dangerous to take on that mentality, because so many other things are built upon that foundation that is largely based upon ignorance. So before I get into the comments, I wanted to share this video and really just go step by step of how they're selling this to you. So like I said, this stuff can only be sold to you because you're ignorant. It's like shrinking down your consciousness to a child or some kind of hopeless and helpless entity just floating in space, like the Big Bang. You're just a piece of garbage floating in space from the Big Bang that just happens to have a memory, emotions, and a brain, and that's it. You're just a brain. This is why they say, they're gonna say in this video, they're trying to take brains and switch a head from one body to another body. They have no interpretation of the heart space, of the soul as a whole. You are limited to the fatty tissue of the brain. That's where this mind control program is going. And videos like this are designed to make you think, not only consciously but subconsciously, that you are nothing, that you're just a nothing. That's what the Big Bang is. That's what heliocentrism is. You're a dead planet. You're a dead nothing that has no meaning and no purpose. And as long as you have no meaning and no purpose, you can be controlled by the people who have empowered themselves with the knowledge and the knowingness of this plane of existence as a whole, at your expense. This is what's happened to the indigenous and the aboriginal people when they were demonized and called primitive and savage, in order to sell in the manifest destiny mentality of the Bible, Christianity, and the conquering of the lands known as settlers and colonists. This soft genocide that's been going on, that's still going on today. It's still going on today, and people cannot see this. There was a quote that I think his name is Mark Lamont Hill. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, Mark Lamont Hill. There's a quote that he said, and I don't follow this guy, but really link to any of the other stuff that he says. But there is a good amount of truth in this quote that I saw the other day that says, white people have to be traitors to their own race to stop white supremacy. That's like a hell of a conundrum to really see, but there is a great amount of truth there to see where I'm coming from. If you do not think that white supremacy still exists, then just turn this video off right now and don't listen to anything else I'm getting ready to say. Don't listen to anything else that I'm talking about, because it'll just make you even more angry or whatever it is, and you need to look at something else. This video is not for you. The supremacy program still exists. I don't have to give too many examples for you to see that. Just because the Civil Rights Act was activated in the 60s doesn't mean that the KKK and all that other stuff just went away. That story still exists inside the individuals and the collective as a whole. Just look at Hollywood. Look at your movies. Look at the producers of these movies. Look at the sports arenas. Who are the coaches of these sports? Who are the vast majority of owners in basketball, football, baseball? Look at your top 40 music. Look at your politics. Look at the White House. Look at the Queen of England and the colonial program that has all these military bases all over the place, convincing you that it's for freedom. No, this is for stealing of land and power. And if you trace it all the way back through the 60s, through slavery, through into the Christopher Columbus slaughtering and massacring the indigenous people of North and South America, all the Taino people in the islands of Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, all these revolutions, all this stuff that happened, this goes back to the origins of the white supremacy program. And if you go even deeper into Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's information, you will see that it's heavily rooted in the idea of white genetic annihilation and protecting against that. That's part of the story, but it's a very definite part of the story that people don't even want to even look at. Anytime somebody comes to me talking about, racism doesn't exist, or you're a racist because you said the words white supremacy, or you used the word white and this and that, give me a break with all that nonsense. Like, that is the defense program. And I'll give a prime example in when I share these comments of how the main defense mechanism for this program is to both play the dominating factor, like the bully and the victim, playing both the victim and the persecutor. That's how this system works. They play the persecutor when they say they're giving you freedom and protecting you from terrorists. And then they play the victim when they say, oh, well, we are being hit by terrorists. And the same thing happens when you talk about this stuff. Say, well, what about all the technology and everything that's come from the colonial program? Don't you benefit from that? You're going to be real sorry when everything that's come up from the Colombian program, the supremacy, basically what they're saying, the supremacy program is giving you technology and public education system. You're going to be sorry when you don't have that anymore and all that nonsense. So that's playing both the victim and playing the bully at the same time. It's like pushing this way on you, and at the same time saying, oh, don't hurt us. You're aggressive people. You're savage and primitive people. Don't hurt us. We're just trying to share the word of God. We're trying to share the word of this book. That's all. That's all we're doing. Meanwhile, you're being struck with smallpox, genocided, massacre, and your land is being stolen while they are smiling in your face. It's a polite genocide. And since people, like that quote was saying, one of the biggest defense mechanisms is people not acknowledging that this system exists. People not acknowledging that it hasn't gone away. That's why I focus so much on this in reference to flat earth and everything else. Heliocentrism is just another version of distraction and playing the victim and the bully in order to get everybody lost in the sauce. No different than what the religious program like Christianity, the Jesuits, the Bible, the church, all that stuff does. It's like, this is given to you, but how many more people have died in the name of that God than anything else? That needs to be questioned and understood, understood, and overstood of what the intentions are about that, what its origins are, and how it's going to expand into the future. So this video I'm going to share right now is an example of pretty much the syllabus of how this system is trying to expand into the future of mind control programming. And you can see already off the bat, 1,000 years in the future, this is not taking into account the entire system, no different than the new age program showing you these Pleiadians that are just blonde hair and blue-eyed aliens that are pretty much representing the same kind of mentality like the blonde hair, blue-eyed Jesus program. This video was trending. It just started trending, excuse me, on YouTube just like 5 minutes ago. I was like, I was only going to do a video in response to the comments, but this was a good example of the extension of those comments that I'm going to share in a second. This information that you're seeing right now is how they can play the victim role by telling you, how come you don't want this? How come you don't want to merge with a machine? How come you don't want a bionic eye? How come you don't want an ear aid that can help you record music and listen to your phone with a hearing aid? And how dare you not want this stuff? This stuff is helping the disabled people. How dare you not want transhumanism? Blind people who have one eye that's blind can now have a bionic eye. You must be some kind of monster. That's how this program works. That's how this shit still goes on in the comments section when I make a video just bringing about the question and the observation that racism still exists. Tidal waves of anger, hostility, and just blatant racism comes, washing over the comment section. And you'll see in a second. And yeah, so this video I'll just play because I want to try and keep this video short. This video is an example of the extension of the synthetic universe that lives on top of the ignorance of the separation from nature, the separation from culture, the death and destruction, genocide and massacre that has led up to these so-called powers that be having this so-called power that they have. That's why I address this stuff. The land and the people have been affected with this disease. And it's not only white people that are affected. This is what I'm saying. Everybody is affected by this Western civilization disease that is rooted in separating you from nature, separating you from the soul, the mind, and the body, so that the so-called powers that be can remain in power. And they have to give you little doggy treats like transhumanism, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, like going to Mars, like a bionic eye, like the public education system, all of this stuff, like Barack Obama. They have to give you all of this stuff to make you think that this is the next evolution. This is the best thing. This is not only the best thing in our reality, but the only thing in this reality. And the way we stay away from even questioning that reality is by not questioning stuff like the effects that mainstream religions has on the consciousness as a whole, and the effects that heliocentrism has on the consciousness as a whole. So when you bring heliocentrism up to, or the flat earth up to, an individual who still believes in the heliocentric model, you get that response of, so what? What does that matter? Come on, get out of here. It doesn't even matter if the earth is flat or round and da-da-da-da-da. That's because people haven't realized all that has added up to the flat earth, to the heliocentric deception. They haven't realized the billions of dollars that get funneled into NASA from you, from the people. They haven't realized the foundation that NASA sits on top of, the Columbian universe, the heliocentric synthetic universe as a whole, that goes from the so-called the theories of gravity, relativity, the Big Bang. All of this stuff is a deception that literally affects you on on your genetic level, when you realize that your thoughts have energy. So if your thoughts are being programmed to think into a synthetic universe, you are literally affecting not only the consciousness of the collective, but the overall evolution of your individual consciousness through this experience. That's the intention of giving you all of this information that's based upon a synthetic reality. So we get caught up in like hopelessness, largely, that this power is too big to fail. That's like they say with the banks are too big to fail. Well, the same thing is being said with heliocentrism and the colonial program. It's too big to fail. So what are we gonna do? What are your solutions? You just talk about all this stuff, but you don't bring about any solutions. Like, get the hell out of here with all that nonsense. My solution is my action, my waking up every morning and putting my thoughts to these words to help this information be acknowledged for what it is, so the healing can occur and we can actually do something and address this system. We have to build our power back up in the people from the inside out before anything actually gets done. So when people talk about solutions, they're talking about like some shallow ass action that isn't really going to the depths, from my perspective, of what needs to be done here. Talking about like pruning the tree. That's pruning the tree in reference to like addressing capitalism and the bankers and the Zionist influence of the money system. That's all a part of it, but that still exists only on the branches of this hollowed out tree of life. We have to go to the roots of these stories, to the roots, reconnect to the roots of these stories. That's the only way you will be able to empower yourself and gain enough strength to realize that what needs to be addressed and what you need to do to address this entire tree as a whole, because this synthetic reality is being built on top of the information that we've been held in the dark from. And some of the most obvious stuff that exists out there is the division between people, the division of the outward. There's a difference between artificial division and the actual the sacred things that are supposedly dividing us. They're not dividing us. They're just differences. There's a beautiful difference between a man and a woman. That is natural. There's a beautiful difference between a Native American person and an Aboriginal Australian person. There's a difference between a Brazilian person and an African person, and all the divisions within Africa, and all the divisions within Native America, and all the divisions within Asia, and like the Southeast Asians and North Asians and Northern Asians. And there's a beautiful difference there that is natural, that is different than the intention that is imposed by the synthetic program who utilizes those differences to create a divisive program to work for the system which needs to remain in power. That's the chaos. That's the side effect of people not really knowing the depths of their roots, but being caught up in the distractive programming that's been generated by the so-called powers that be, including the Zionists, the Jesuits, everybody in the so-called Illuminati, the cabal, all those programs who need to maintain power over you by ignorance. What I'm saying is, step one is to address the ignorance that is of the reality that's going on today. The ignorance that still lives inside of people today, to think that they are better than other people because they have this supremacy mentality. To think that they can burn a cross on somebody's lawn because they're making a statement. To think that they can hang somebody, lynch somebody. This stuff is still happening today. Still happening today. I just watched a documentary yesterday about from 1991, where this black principal went to some city in Iowa or something like that, and literally had crosses burning, in front of his work site, and having all kinds of racial slurs written all over the place. He was a principal for an elementary school for basically a 98% white city. And everybody in that city who was interviewed said they don't want that to happen. They don't want any kind of other people in there. They want only white people in there. This is in 1991. I'm not talking about 60, 65, and 61. I'm talking about 1991. That's basically like yesterday. And if you can see that that existed basically yesterday, then you can see that that is still alive and well today. It's still happening today. But that information will not be acknowledged. Because people think that, since, you have a smartphone and, there's people in the NFL and there's mixtures on television, you think it's all different. No, that's the cover scene. That's for you to think things are changing, but things are not actually changing. So while you are thinking things are changing and still have that internal chaos, that subconscious chaos, and those hollowed out roots, now you are being installed with the synthetic roots, the synthetic trunk of the tree, the synthetic branches, the synthetic leaves, and the synthetic fruits that are this transhumanism, simulation theory, new age, alien agenda, new world order, new age agenda, all love and light, oneness, unity, all that perspective. They're utilizing that. It's weaponizing that as in order to maintain power, in order to say, we're still in charge. The only real thing that makes change is when we make change. So real change happens when like Barack Obama becomes president. That's real change. And we did that the American way, voting. No, that's a control grid. Same thing happens with Donald Trump, talking about make America great again. This is a controlled program. And until you go to the roots of how this entire system has been generated, you'll only be playing checkers. You'll be playing in the game, thinking you're playing something else. So I'll play this video, and then you can see what I'm talking about as far as how they are selling this world to you.
Humans are still evolving.
Where will evolution take us 1,000 years? Chances are we'll be taller. Humans have already seen a boom over the last 130 years. Blah, 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 blah. So they make it, they start off like basic. Like, you're so stupid. This is how they, then straight into transhumanism. Straight into, oh yeah, if you have hearing problems, then this is good for you. Straight into that. Complete separation from nature. Bionic eyes. Oh, people who are disabled with their eyes. Technology can be controlled. That's why this is being installed into the human experience. Your natural organic experience cannot be controlled. Your connection to your pineal gland, your psychedelic experiences, your intuition, your empathy, your connection to who and what you are outside of the physical reality cannot be controlled. So those connections must be severed, which is why a lot of people don't dream anymore, which is why a lot of people are being locked into technology, which is why everything is about the materialistic version of reality, which is why your soul is being disconnected from your experience, which is why you are disconnected from your higher mind, which is why the internet is installed as pretty much your higher mind, and that's it. And that's easy to see how that's being controlled. Everything is filtered through technology, through the system, which is externalized. You have no internal power. So if they take your internal power and externalize it, now they own you. They got you. So technology outside of you is one way to own you. Look how many people are locked into technology every day. Look how many people are literally look at babies who scream to death when you take that smartphone away because they can't play those video games. That is an actual effect, not only on the individual, but as a collective as a whole. And once the smartphone is the segue of controlling you internally, your actual biological computer, your body, your technology, your natural technology is being hijacked by these so-called powers that be, so they can soak this energy from your reality. And it doesn't only exist in the physical and in the mind. This exists also in the non-physical, these non-physical entities. And I'll get into that in an upcoming video, because I want to focus only on that for a video and go into the depths of this hijacking of your soul essence, the hijacking of human consciousness. But for right now, this is a good segue into that, so you can realize how it's happening on the physical reality and how it's happening on the psychological reality. And some of the blocks, like I said earlier in this video, some of the blocks from you realizing that this, or from some of the blocks that realizing that this is actually occurring, is stuff like not acknowledging the basic separation programs that exist today. The powerless program is what allows the so-called powers that be to hijack your frequency. This is how this program works. So locking you down into having a nothingness origin from the Big Bang, a nothingness origin from a monkey evolution, the animalistic behaviors of, this experience, the dead energies of these bogus theories and so-called laws of the universe, these bogus theories of what humans really are, locks you into this very shallow interpretation of your reality. Like they tell you, you only use 10% of your brain. That's on purpose. It has an effect on you. So they tell you that so they can say, well, now you're using 90% of your brain if you put this microchip in your brain, if you put this computer inside your body. That'll allow you to use 100% of your brain. Good job. Well, who invented that 10% of your brain bullshit in the first place? Could that not be a mechanism to control you, to set up the foundation for something in the future? Obviously, when you take into account their pushing of simulation theory and this being a computer, and also simultaneously pushing transhumanism. If you want to look at how I've gone into depths in that, I made plenty of videos a while ago, a few months ago, going into that. And that's how this program is being sold. So, yeah. So they sell it to you by what they've already primed you for. And like I said before, here it is. This prosthetics, they play your emotional body. That's the way to play the victim role at the same time. It's like, how dare you? You mean people who don't have legs who now have legs because of the technology that's been invented? You mean you don't want disabled people to have legs? How dare you? It's like, what the hell are you talking about? But that's the intention of this program. That's how they play the victim and the bully. And they play the bully by saying, if you don't believe in heliocentrism, then you're a psychopath. You need to be locked up. If you don't believe in the Bible, you need to be burned. If you don't believe in the Bible, you need to be hung. You need to be dragged behind a car for 10 miles. You need to be drowned. That's the same mentality that's being put off right here. They play both sides. And this is not universal for all people. This is for people who have a tendency to lean towards that ownership and power over other people. The vast majority of people do not have this disease. But this disease is very alive and active within a group of people that are very part of this haves and have-nots program, maintaining this have and have-nots program. And it is definitely connected to the colonial program. It is definitely connected to the genocide and massacres that is a result of the Colombian manifest destiny. It is definitely connected to the storyline of white genetic annihilation. It is not only connected to that, but that is a very definite part of this storyline that if you do not look at it, it's not going to make it go away. It'll only make it get larger. It'll get worse if you do not look at this stuff. So this is how I'm saying that we get played, the victim and the aggressor. So they sell it into you when you get caught up in between. So they sell you all this genetics. It's all about genetics, and this is where they're telling you that this is the program of telling you your origins, where you came from. Oh, you have 10% from Western Africa, and you're 10% Polish, and you're 90% British, and all this other stuff. That's to maintain control. So here's the Mars stuff that's going on. We're so powerful, we went to the moon, we went to Mars. So they have to sell you all of this as a cartoon. It's literally how it is, so you can believe in it. This is to play against your inner child. So yeah, the genetics is to add to the whole oneness, unity, we're all one, we're all human stuff, to cover up what has led up to today. All of the devastation that's been a result of the colonial program. So here's this immortality stuff that's being sold now through transhumanism and simulation theory, talking about that they can just cut the head off of one person and put it on another person, and then that will be amazing. And then here's the whole transsexual, transgender, trans, all that other trans stuff that's going on, trans race stuff that's going on. That's how they sell it to you. All of this is a program to sell you this synthetic universe. So that's basically what I wanted to share with that part, is to share that's a prime example of how they're selling it to you. They're selling you this program that is for you to buy into, as if this is, first of all, they have power over you. They are the evolutionary controllers of your reality, and that you're just a nothing that needs to follow them, because the scientists and the politicians are the evolutionary peak of your reality. So I'm going to go through this real quick, these comments real quick, but you can see how lost, how sick people still are. So when I shared that video yesterday talking about the relation of racism to flat earth, that's to address the system of power, the system of control. The mentality of manifest destiny was to utilize the Bible to trick people into saying, this is the actual word of God. What you're doing is primitive and savage. There's no real connection to nature through what you're saying. There's no real connection to God to what you're doing. You're just a primitive nothing. You need to have technology like us. You need to have an iron sword like us. You need to have, this. This is the civilized version of reality. You're just primitive. So that was the origin of what has led up today, which is the heliocentric program, which is saying that, what are you talking about, that flat earth stuff? That's not how it is. That's primitive. That's savage. You need to get on the ball of technology and the humans of today. Something's wrong with you. And what happened to the indigenous and the Aboriginal people? The land was stolen, the same land that people are living on today. As a result, the blood and the bones of the indigenous and the Aboriginal people today are still underneath the ground right now. There's a mall. There's a mall. There's a literally the Ohlone people back home, and all over there's shell mounds all across the Bay Area. But one of the main ones is in Emeryville Shell Mound, where the Ohlone people protest every Black Friday because a damn mall was built on top of an outdoor mall was built on top of burial grounds. A shell mound that was two plus stories tall, an entire city block long. They cut that down, initially built a dance pavilion on top of it, so they're literally dancing on the blood, on the bones and the burial grounds of the Native Americans back in like the late 1800s. They built a dance pavilion on it. Then they built a Sherwin-Williams on top of it, a paint, when you know that logo where they say they cover the earth with paint, which is blood. And now they have an actual mall built on top of it. AMC, Banana Republic, PF Chang's, The Gap, Apple Store, AT&T, Bank of America, all of these corporations, Old Navy, built on top of a burial ground right now. That's still being protested every day. So when people tell me this stuff is in our past, that stuff doesn't exist anymore, you need to get the hell out of my face with that nonsense. So when people tell me, oh, racism doesn't exist and all that other stuff, go tell that to the Colombian civil rights leader in speaking for melanated Colombian people, dark-skinned Colombian people, who was beheaded because of her work. Not that long ago. Something like a year ago or less than a year ago. Tell that to these people who are still losing their land. Tell that to the Papua New Guinea people who are losing their land right now as a result of this colonial program. Under the mentality that they are primitive and savage, and they should just have their lands be taken over. No different than the rainforest in South America. It's ridiculous when people bring this stuff up like this. So, anytime I talk about this information, as I just mentioned right now, these are the defense mechanisms. I'm going to share with you right now. So you're reading this right now. One of the defense mechanisms are to just kind of water it down so you don't really look into it. You realize there are white kids who don't go to school. There are a lot of white kids who don't go to good schools, right? I'm offended, but I feel like you're implying there aren't within itself. Oh God, I can't even this. I can't even read. It's so disgusting, and the words don't even want to come out of my mouth in reference to how ridiculous this is. So basically, this individual is saying that I am implying that white people are not also affected. So-called white people are not also affected. I'm not saying that, and that wasn't implied. The implication, the intention of this is to say that this story has a particular focus that has not been acknowledged yet. And since it's not been acknowledged, that cancer has only expanded. So my response was that was not implied, that your shallow and personalized perspective added that implication to something more complex than one individual's emotions. So the individual got caught up in their emotions and attached that implication to something that was very abstract in reference to bringing light to a storyline and a deeper definition of what racism actually is. The racism of controlling and the fate and destiny. What Baba De Gregory was saying in that little clip was saying that the way the system, the supremacy system, the colonial system is today, you have a majority of black and brown peoples in inner cities on purpose. You have Native Americans on these reservations who are dying because of the alcoholism, the sickness and disease, and everything else that comes as a result of this capitalistic nonsense as a peak of human evolution. This is all on purpose. You have Indigenous and Aboriginal people in rainforests and all over the other lands being taken over by these construction sites and these genetically modified food sites, cutting down rainforests for palm oil, cutting down rainforests for the wood to build these ridiculous ass non-sustainable homes, building all this garbage for the materialistic version of reality at the expense of the people who are still heavily connected to the balances of nature. So when I say this information, it's immediately defended against by saying I'm the bad guy by even talking about this shit. That's what I mean by saying it's more complex. It's not about your emotions or how you feel about this. This is about the facts that exist, not your imaginary implications that you think I'm saying when I say such things. No, I'm saying this information so it's acknowledged to be existing. And meanwhile, like I said in the next thing, you apparently missed the entire point that isn't focused so much on the individual, but is addressing the alchemy of controlling and steering the fate and destiny of entire races of people over generations. The fate and destiny of entire people maintains the haves and the have-nots program. And of course, this individual responds, that was implied with the clip you played and saying you agreed with it. So you're going to tell me what I implied? You're going to tell me what it is without acknowledging your own implications, your own perspective on how that might be an implication from your own emotional perspective? So once they set that tone, then they build it off. So since it was implied by me, which they are saying, then they just add on top of it. I like the assumption that my perspective is shallow, though. You are being divisive. So you're the one who is unable to come out of your perspective as a melanated person. This is another example of people acting like racism and the melanated, the story doesn't exist. Because I speak in reference to the onslaught against the melanated people, that was just well known with Christopher Columbus. It was well known with the indigenous and the Aboriginal people, the Native Americans, and everything that's still going on today. It was just well known when they were putting people in mass graves. The Spanish people and the Portuguese were doing this in mass graves in South America and in North America, and smallpox and all that stuff in North America. That was just well known and out in the open. It was well known and out in the open when they were lynching people and burning people and dragging people behind cars in the 50s, 40s, 60s, 20s, and slavery of 3/5 of a human. It's just well known back then. Now, since you have MTV, VH1, BET, and the NFL and baseball and all this other stuff, you think it doesn't exist. No, it just shifts gears. So when I speak about that story, since people have been so distracted by the program as if it has changed, they say it doesn't exist. And since also so-called white people have been lumped in with the persecution of this have and have-nots program, they still say this stuff doesn't exist. I'm not saying that there are white people that are also lumped into this program. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there is an intention that has roots centuries back. And if you do not know the historical document, the evidence of what has happened centuries ago, you will not know what's happening right now. And you sure as hell will not know what's happening tomorrow. So when people get caught up in their emotional body and say, well, you're being divisive by saying it's only about melanated people and it's your melanin. No, just because I speak in reference to the melanated storyline doesn't mean that I am disregarding the fact that also a group of white people are also being affected. All people are being affected by this. What I'm saying that there is an intention that this stuff has grown from. And if you do not know the ins and outs of what this story has, the roots of where this story comes from, then you're not going to know. You're not going to be able to know what it is that you're addressing right now. You're just not going to know it. So this is the defense mechanism that is inherently designed by these so-called powers that be. So they don't have to fight because they have their little pawns out there fighting with their emotional body against people who say anything about this information. So they say this is playing the victim role. Talking about most of the propaganda in America right now is saying that white people are the problem and the minorities need to be put in lead roles or hired for different roles simply based upon their ethnicity. So no, I don't buy this narrative you're putting forth. That's the victim role. So they play the aggressor, or like, you see what I'm saying, but it goes back and forth. And then there's a response to that. Where he's talking about whites are like the white Jews of loving and love, switching between victim and victimizer. So I agree with the victim and victimizers part. The rest is his or her perspective, which I partially agree with in some ways. There is a way to. There is a benefit for people not taking responsibility for this information. There's a benefit to playing the victim and the victimizer. There's a benefit for not talking about the history. There's a benefit for thinking that the supremacy program is going to, like he said or she said, rectify itself. And all of these programs are designed to maintain survival of the system or the program as a whole. It is a self-preservation of the system. So yes, genocide, lying, playing dual roles, stealing, cheating does exist in the haves and have-nots program. All of this exists in some kind of way. And people are being hit with it every day. So this person's response to that individual. So you are better? You want to play that game? You want to play the racist card? Because of closed-minded people like you who play the crybaby all the time, you are the one making us racist. You are the ones dressing like gangsters, smoking crack in your 1 foot, I guess, apartment, 1 feet app. I don't know. Leaving the mother of your child alone because you are too young and stupid to take any responsibilities, and then cry that it's the white man's fault. Sincerely, F you, and if you are so much better, then why don't you go back where the sun shine harder to fit your amazing, full of melanin skin, and let the white technology behind. You never know, maybe it's gonna take your soul too. That is disgusting, but that is an individual. Paid troll or not, that mentality exists out there. So somebody says to that individual who just vomited all of that nonsense in this comment section, calm down, don't take it personal. I'm sure if you had asked drink water, he would agree it was meant different from how you took it. It obviously, so this when they respond with this disgusting garbage like gangster smoking crack and take any responsibilities, leaving your children, blaming the white man and making them racist because it's just ridiculous. So that's the aggressive part. That's the victimizer. Now listen to the victim. This is in response to that. I'm sorry, I didn't want to sound harsh as I did, but God help me, I'm tired of listening of the same old story again. We all read the same books and have been told the same story over and over again. We know our ancestors did bad things, like all races ancestors did. Like just ball all this stuff up, but the white one is closer. Less than 300 years. Not less than 300 years. Today. It's less than 300 years and today. So that's why we know more about that time. No, that's not why we know more about that time. We know more about that time because it's still happening today. This is why I say this information. This is why I share this perspective, because it's a big part of it. But they want to ball it all up like, oh, that's in the past. We need to just move on. My generation and my parents, grandparents feel so ashamed of that story that we thought it would be a good idea to share it, blah, 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 blah. I don't even know if I need to read any of this nonsense. If you want to read any of the rest of this, just pause it and read it on your own, because I'm going to move on. But this is just an example of how they move from the victimizer to the victim. So you saw the aggressive nature and the blatantly racist nonsense of that original comment that Lady K put up there, and now saying, oh, I can't believe it, I'm just so tired of being called a racist, when all I do is say stuff like like being a gangster, all black people, basically saying all black people smoke crack and dress like gangsters and don't take responsibility for their children, and none of this is taking into the design of the supremacy program, the design, the history that led up to what's going on today. So many things, and people who watch this video or watch this channel know what I'm talking about. So this is just an extension of what this individual was saying. It's just more outward, literally saying Sieg Heil, in reference to the Hitler and Jewish thing, and then talking about racism is not wanting your nation to be overrun by third world savages. Jeez. All right, well, take it a step even further. This is a more intellectual approach to the storyline that, in my eyes, is no different. It's the same defense mechanism by saying this stuff doesn't exist. Saying I don't have any real solution, talk about a problem without any real solutions. First off, me being able to share this information is part of a solution. To acknowledge this information is part of a solution. I don't claim to know everything or have all the solutions. What I do know is that there's information that is not being acknowledged. It is overtly being ignored, and it is adding to the so-called powers that be system. And until any real solutions get made, we first need to understand that these systems still exist. But people like this individual say this stuff doesn't exist. So where is it at? Talk about waste of time. You may be thinking we're all human, new age stuff, waste of time. So many dead people by saying we are all human and walking away. Well, great. Just saying we're all human must be the great. That's the trick. That's the thing. That's all we need to just know, right? That's it. That's gonna save everything, is just to say we're all human. Let that be your solution and see how that works. I am not racist, but if someone else is, it isn't my problem. And if I make it a problem, then it becomes a problem for everyone. Okay. Well, you can say that as long as people are still being genocided, massacred, their lands being stolen. You can say that as long as you want. That's your choice. I'm not knocking you for that. But me sharing this information is not you. I am not you in reference to how I share my art. You do your thing and you just tell people that everything is just about being human while I talk about what I'm talking about. So you do your thing, I'm going to do my thing. Now, this is this individual's result or solution. Going back to Nazi bankster war is very important because it is something regardless of what color or hate is important. So this individual is coming from that perspective, which I am saying is, I am not saying that that's not a part of this program. That is just a part of the branches of this program. I am talking about the roots that led up to the capitalistic program, that led up to the bankers and all of that being locked into our mentality. Not to only focus on it from skin color and races and all that other stuff that exists, but to say that it does exist in some kind of way that needs to be acknowledged. And if you only focus on the capitalism and the money, you will be missing a big part of the cancer. So this individual, the color of skin is not important any longer. To hold on to that mentality is to bring it with you into the future. Nonsense. Just ridiculous to act like that's basically saying racism doesn't exist anymore. And if you just look away and don't put it in your luggage, don't put it in your carry-on luggage, it'll just float away. No, it won't. Focus on something that has real solutions, because you will never get people to see other people in a different light. That is on the individual. But we can all fight against the capitalistic society we have going on. Good. You do that. I thought that was the end game. That was my main thing to focus on when I was in the Occupy program, yelling at the bankers. That is an actual program. It is a controlled system to make you fight the power, supposedly fight the power, so you can empower the so-called power. It's a program. Protesting, voting, these are program. Occupy, like on day one of Occupy Oakland, the Ohlone people showed up there and said, how the hell can you occupy occupied land? That's what I'm coming from. So the individuals who are protesting, not saying that they were doing a bad thing by talking about the banking industry, the capitalism program, not saying that they were wrong for addressing that. All that needs to be addressed. What I'm saying is that there's a deeper layer that's not being understood. And by this comment, you're basically walking up to those Ohlone people who came into Occupy Oakland and said, how the hell, I'm for everything that you're saying right now, but how the hell are you going to talk about occupying occupied land? You need to reevaluate what it is that you're saying and what you're doing before you start going any further into what you need to expand your perspective to see what's really going on here. Because if you just stick with this Occupy, you'll be caught up in another program which will only empower the so-called powers that be. So yes, capitalism and the bankers and all that stuff is something that needs to be addressed. If you only empower yourself to address that from that perspective, by all means, do that. That is your mission. My mission is to get to the roots of the human storyline that is at the foundation of all of that capitalistic programming, that is a result of the separation from nature, that is a result from the separation of the various humans across the earth plane, including heliocentrism and so forth. And then this individual takes it a step even further. How do you even know all the slave stories you discuss are even real? This individual says, how do you know that the slave stories are even real? Like basically saying, how do you know that the Aboriginal Australians who were genocided is real? How do you know that the Native Americans who were slaughtered and genocided was real? How do you know that South America and North America was even real? That is some deep, like conspiracy theory programming that is... It's ridiculous. It's kind of like how people are talking about, like, they don't even, they're questioning, like, men and women. It's like, oh, this is a tranny. I'm like, not to say that the transsexual stuff doesn't exist in the program, but to not even know, like, to not have any real observation or understanding of your reality, that you don't even know, like, not saying that it's easy to know a lot of the times, but to just really have no connections, to take it that step further, to say that the genocide didn't exist, to say that these stories didn't exist is ridiculous. But that's this individual's reality. So Drinkwater's response is pretty much on point. You must be deluded. White supremacist programming is everywhere today. Stop pretending it's in the past. It's even worse now because people are taught that racism doesn't exist. and you are called racist for speaking anything of the racist system. These are the layers. This is the soft version of telling me that I'm wrong for speaking about this. Oh, yes, that exists in some kind of way, but that's in the past. We need to focus on reality as it is now. Capitalism and the bankers. Okay, that's the soft way of saying this same shit. Yeah. And this ridiculous nonsense. These are the layers. It's like avoid, deny, and defend. Avoid, deny, and defend. This guy is defending this program. This individual is denying that exists. And this one is like avoiding it. And all of them are avoiding, denying, and defending it all at the same time too. It's all part of it. But there are like subcategories to the larger categories. So the larger categories are people who are lost in, either caught up in avoiding it, denying it, or defending it. This individual is definitely caught up in defending it, not even allowing himself to see that, you know, this is deeper than that. Then you have people who will avoid and defend, which are pretty much the same when you really get down to it, but people are anchored in their own way. So this is another example of avoiding / denying, or avoiding / denying, not literally defending. It's not as far as defending, but another point of avoiding from my perspective. Not to come down, but not to come down on this individual, but just to expand. And I'll close this video out because I know it's gone on long enough. But this needs to be said. This stuff needs to be addressed. So thanks for addressing the problem of war against humanity as a whole. I would like to, so that's like the setup. And then I would like to hear your take on the who and the why and the possibly some solutions. Here's this whole thing again. People want to move into solutions and don't even want to acknowledge what I'm really talking about. How could you know what your solutions are going to be if you don't know what it is that you're addressing? First of all, step one, and I'll go into it in my response. I have no issues with your perspectives on race, but the vibe I get is blaming it on the white man. That's another deny or lack of really understanding where I'm coming from. That vibe you get is not from me. That vibe you get is in defense from yourself. So whatever's the enemy is much more important. Power is much more powerful than a white man. Personally, I feel it's honestly so deeply rooted, so widespread, so difficult for the average person to detect, so pervasive that I honestly don't see any other way of it being fixed without some massive divine intervention or miracle of some sort. Because I speak in reference to the white supremacy program, do not take that as that's the only thing that exists. No, that is one chapter to the larger chapter of the haves and the have-nots and the control grid as a whole. It's one part of it. This is why I share it. Because in order to really get to the next steps, you have to go one step at a time. So my response, if you were an Aboriginal Australian who had their family genocided by the colonial empire, do you think you would still be getting that vibe? So if this individual was sitting in the position of a genocided family tree, would they still be saying, getting the vibe of blaming it on the white man? No, they would have a very definite understanding that yes, the colonial empire did go to Australia and completely genocided the Aboriginal Australians and made the Tasmanian people go extinct. You only hear about extinction with animals. They literally slaughtered an entire race of people to extinction. If you are the descendant of one of those individuals, Could you just wash this all away and say that so-called white people, or the Spanish and the Portuguese, who were an extension of the Colombian era, the colonial program, you think that you could just say that that doesn't exist? No, that is a very huge part of your history that is not being acknowledged by the descendants of the people who did those slaughters. That's why I said it's not limited to any one thing. If I'm speaking on this is because the language can only focus on any one thing at one time. And the reasons why one of the main reasons why it's so difficult to really go into the depths of it is because at the same time that the control grid is setting up this oneness, unity, new age sort of light, love, and light perspective to keep people from acknowledging the depths of this storyline and acknowledging how it's still going on today. So, yeah. So I said, it's obvious that no person alive today is responsible for the origins of this system, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the system is still alive and well today, and the descendants of that oppressive conscious and subconscious program still benefit from it at the expense of our ancestors and relatives alive today. This is a cancer that needs to be understood and acknowledged so it doesn't reappear in the future as something worse. That is the video. That something worse is the video that I played earlier in this video. That is the something worse. That is the extension of the separation from nature. That is the extension that people are just being chatteled into because they haven't realized the depths of this program. In fact, start defending it. I'm not concerned with miracles in reference to that individual having a hopeless mentality, talking about only thing that can change something is a miracle or some sort. These are my thoughts. So you asked for my thoughts. These are my thoughts on it. I'm not concerned with miracles. Miracles exist, but are not my responsibility. My responsibility is to challenge myself to address what is present in this moment with the empowered intention of not needing a miracle or savior to do them for me. Waiting on a miracle or savior is the very definition of positively charged hopelessness. Positively charged hopelessness. That is what the New Age community is about. That is what the New Age mentality is about. And that is what this political program is about. Positively charged hopelessness. Loving your first black president as real change that we can believe in. That is positively charged hopelessness. The system is not too big to be called out for what it is, and the people are the only ones charged with that responsibility. My solution focus is aimed at step 1. Acknowledge the various conscious and subconscious diseases and their origins. Once that is fully understood, and overstood, then it will be time to move on to step 2. The system that also exists quietly in individuals, wants to jump ahead of step 1 with stuff like New Age, oneness, everything is love, the future, light, love, and light and unity, and don't acknowledge the history. They want to jump ahead of step 1 in order to avoid being held accountable for their profit-based destructive ignorance. Not saying that you as the individual are profiting. Obviously, there are people who are poor, white people that are poor, all peoples that are poor. I'm saying that there's a subconscious that if the supremacy program still exists, then the privilege mentality still exists. Look at your television. It's telling you something. Look at your newscasters. They're telling you something. Look at Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. Look at all your Hollywood actors. Look at your coaches in the NBA, the NFL. Look at your owners of these teams in the NBA and the NFL and all these other sports teams. Look at your politicians. They are subconsciously telling you something. They're telling you that they are the only ones. They are the smartest, most evolved creatures, humans, on this plane of existence, and the only ones that who are made to be in power and control are the individuals who look like this, who talk like this, who act like this. That still exists today. Turn your TV on and look at it. See this programming that is happening to little kids right now. This is why I'm saying this. Because as long as people act like this doesn't exist, those kids are still being programmed with this nonsense. This stuff must be acknowledged and spoken about, and acting like it's just in the past. That's old stuff. You're bringing up old stuff. Racism doesn't exist anymore. Acting like this stuff doesn't exist is worse than somebody out there overtly like denying or defending this program, like that obvious individual talking about Sieg Heil and all that other stuff. He's actually, in my eyes, better to be out there saying what he's saying, because he makes it obvious of seeing what's going on. He makes this program obvious that it's still alive today. People are saying that it doesn't exist anymore, or saying that it's just, you're being divisive because you're bringing up old stuff. You are actually more dangerous than the individual talking about Sieg Heil. You are more dangerous with that new age bullshit. Because you are creating a mentality that other people are going to say, yeah, he is being divisive because, that is old stuff. We need to talk about. Get out of here with that nonsense. This channel is not for you. Take that on somebody else's channel. You are more dangerous by trying to, and this is the thing. Most people don't even know that they're more dangerous. They literally do not know. And that's what I really think is happening with individuals who say stuff like this, who say stuff without even really knowing what they're saying. Like this individual. I don't really think that you know that you're more dangerous than the individual saying Sieg Heil. You are more dangerous, in my perspective. That shit is dangerous because you have taken the position of this program and have unconsciously covered it up for them. That is on purpose. They need you to do that. This is why there's so much focus on, we need to just focus on capitalism and all this other. Do that all you want. That's where you are right now. You do it. I'm doing something else. You want to tell me I'm wrong for doing what I'm doing? Fine. Say whatever you say. But I'm going to tell you exactly how it is that I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm not telling you that you're wrong for doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. You're going to find out eventually what it is that you're actually doing on a deeper level. Keep doing what you're doing. But I will have my opinion and say that what it is that you're doing is damn dangerous. It's more dangerous than like I said, than the individual talking about Sieg Heil. Because at least they can see it. At least people can see it and say, oh, that's ridiculous. I can't believe people still exist out there like that. But no, when you say this stuff like this, it's more complex, it's more intricate, and it's more dangerous because of that. So that's all I got for this video. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.